Before the immemorial era, before the olden antiquity era, before the first venerable ascended, the world was not yet the world. There was no distinction between sky and earth. The 9 heavens were not layered. The 5 regions had not drifted apart. There was only swirling, silent chaos. Within the heart of this primordial chaos lay the blue sea of life. Think of it as the womb of everything, the mother of all existence, the cradle of myriad beings. Its waters weren't like normal water. They were condensed life essence, pure and undiluted. From the deepest trenches, the first creatures crawled out. Some became beasts, some became plant. All of them came from that ocean, and from the deepest abyss of all, a single crystalline bubble rose. It floated up through layers of swimming monstrosities and ancient seaweed, untouched, unharmed. It breached the surface. It burst, and out stepped the first human, Ren Zu. Here's the thing about being the first of your kind. There's no template. No one tells you what you are. Ren Zu opened his eyes and saw a nightmare. The sky was bruised purple, hanging so low it seemed ready to crush the earth. The horizon was torn in places. The wind howled like crying ghosts, and Ren Zu was naked. No fur like the tiger, no scales like the crocodile, no talons like the eagle, just soft, pale, fragile skin. He walked along the shore of the blue sea, leaving the first human footprints in the sand. But the world didn't welcome him. The shadows in the distance shifted. Eyes glowed in the fog. Ren Zu realized the cruel truth of his birth. He wasn't the master of this world. He wasn't even the hunter. In this savage wilderness, he was merely the prey. That's the whole vibe of Chapter 1. The universe doesn't owe you a place. You start at the bottom, and everything is trying to eat you. Ren Zu turned his back on the safety of the shore and ventured into the wilderness. Bad decision, but what choice did he have? He walked with trepidation, his pale skin standing out against the dark earth. And he quickly discovered that he wasn't just competing with wolves and tigers. The wilderness was infested with things called predicaments. Here's what you need to understand about predicaments. They're not normal monsters. They're not made of flesh and blood. They're the physical manifestation of difficulty itself, suffering, obstruction, all the bad stuff that makes life hard. And they don't have a fixed form because trouble comes in 10,000 shapes. Some look like churning swamps of rotting mud, waiting to swallow you if you take a careless step. Some look like dark clouds hanging low, raining acid that burns your skin. Some pretend to be jagged rocks, sitting perfectly still until you pass, then shifting to strike when you're not looking. They're everywhere. The cliff too high to climb, the river too wide to cross, the night too dark to navigate. And they talk to each other in this horrible language made of grinding stones, rustling dead leaves, and hollow winds. They saw Ren Zu and said, "A human. A new thing called a human has appeared. Look at him. No shell. No poison. Soft. He smells of naivety. Let's eat him." Fear pierced Ren Zu's heart. He ran. He ran until his lungs burned and his feet were cut to ribbons. He sprinted through forests of thorny ironwood, leaving trails of blood on black bark. He scrambled up steep mountains, his fingernails cracking against stone. He hid in caves, but the dampness predicaments seeped through the cracks and soaked him to the marrow. He climbed trees, but the wind predicaments shook the branches, trying to hurl him to his death. For days that bled into nights, Ren Zu lived in absolute terror. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't stop. He dug for bitter roots to eat. He knelt by stagnant puddles to drink. He was the weakest existence in the entire world. A singular, fragile life constantly bullied, mocked, and hunted by the environment itself. That's Chapter 2. It's the realization that the world isn't just dangerous. It's actively, intelligently hostile, and you're the softest thing in it. Ren Zu's flight came to a desperate end. He found himself trapped on a narrow ledge of black rock. Behind him, a precipice so deep that falling stones made no sound. Below, a pit of jagged spikes glistening with dried blood. In front of him, the horde of predicaments closed in. They didn't rush. They moved with the slow certainty of a nightmare. Ren Zu pressed his back against the cold stone, his knees knocked together. Tears streamed down his face. "I will die here," he thought. "My life has only just begun. Must it end in the belly of a beast?" He squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the end. But the darkness didn't come. Instead, the sky tore open. 3 beams of light descended from the zenith, piercing through the gloomy clouds. They struck the ground between Ren Zu and the monsters, forcing the predicaments to recoil. Floating within the pillars of light were 3 Gu worms. The first was massive and heavy, clad in armor of crimson and black iron. It hovered with a low hum, like a heavy drum beating in a deep cave. It radiated absolute dominance and unyielding force. This was Strength Gu. The second was elegant and slender, its body made of multifaceted crystal. It shimmered with a complex, intelligent light that seemed to shift and calculate with every passing second. This was Wisdom Gu. The third was tiny, dim and unremarkable. It flickered weakly, looking like a dying ember in a pile of cold ash, easy to overlook. We'll come back to that one. The three Gu spoke in unison, their voices resonating directly in Ren Zu's soul. Human, we can save you. We can grant you the power to sweep away these obstacles. Save me, please. Do not be so hasty. The great Tao is fair. To gain, one must lose. We are not your servants or your saviors. We are Gu. If you wish for our help, you must use your own life to provide for us. As long as you pay the price, we will help you. Ren Zu looked at the gnashing teeth of the predicaments, then at the abyss behind him. He had no leverage. He was a beggar at the gates of life and death. I have nothing but this fragile body, but if I die, I have nothing at all. I agree. Whatever the price, I agree. Strength Gu flew forward, pushing the others aside. It landed heavily on the rock. I am Strength Gu. I can grant you the power to shatter rocks, part rivers, crush your enemies, but I require your youth. Youth. Ren Zu had only been born a short while ago. He didn't understand the value of time. Youth seemed like an abstract word, something he had in abundance, seemed like a small price to pay. I have plenty of youth. Take it. Strength Gu burrowed into his body. Ren Zu gasped. He felt a cool spring water being drained from his marrow. His soft skin thickened into leather. The naive light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a savage fire. His muscles swelled and hardened into iron. His blood roared through his veins like a flooding river. He turned to face the predicaments. He was no longer the prey. He punched. The air exploded. A predicament disintegrated. He kicked. The earth shattered. The shockwave blasted the others backward. He moved like a whirlwind, tearing through the monsters that had terrorized him. Within moments, the ledge was silent. The predicaments were dust. Ren Zu stood amidst the carnage, steam rising from his toughened skin. He looked at his hands, calloused, strong, deadly. He laughed. I am strong. I am invincible. With this power, what in this world can stop me? He had lost his youth, but in the intoxication of power, he didn't feel the loss. Not yet. That's the trap of Chapter 3. You don't miss what you've never learned to value. The great Tao is fair. Every gain comes with a loss. But sometimes you're too young and stupid to understand what you're losing. For a season that felt like eternity, Ren Zu became the tyrant of the wilderness. With strength Gu pulsing in his aperture, his dominance was absolute. He walked through primordial jungles and ancient ironwood trees that had stood for 10,000 years snapped like dry twigs. He hunted saber-toothed tigers not for food, but for their skins to sit upon. He wrestled colossal hill bears, forcing their heads into the dirt until they whined. When Ren Zu roared, the sound wasn't human. It was the thunder of a god. Mountains trembled. Beasts that had once viewed him as a soft snack now fled in terror. Ren Zu looked at his hands, hands that could crush boulders into sand, and smiled with arrogance. He believed he had found the ultimate truth. Violence is the only law. Might is the only morality. Strength is the key that opens every door. But the laws of the great Tao aren't that simple, and the heavens aren't so easily conquered. First problem, strength is a fire that burns fiercely, but every fire needs fuel. That fuel was his own energy, his own spirit. After every earth-shattering battle, Ren Zu was overcome by crushing, paralyzing exhaustion. His eyelids grew heavy. His limbs turned to lead. He had to sleep, but the wilderness doesn't sleep. The wind never stops blowing. The river never stops flowing. When Ren Zu closed his eyes, his iron skin softened, his fists unclenched. In the realm of dreams, the strongest man was as vulnerable as a baby. The predicaments lurked in the shadows of his dying campfire. They waited for his snoring to begin. Ren Zu woke many times with fresh wounds, bites on his ankles, scratches on his back, barely surviving the night. Second problem. Strength can destroy, but it can't build. He could shatter a boulder with a single blow, turning it to gravel, but he couldn't stack those pieces into a warm house that wouldn't collapse. He could kill a leopard with a flick of his finger, but he couldn't stitch its hide into clothes to ward off the cold. His fingers were too thick, his touch too heavy. He remained naked, cold, homeless, just a powerful beast living among other beasts, shivering in the rain despite his godlike power. Third problem. The price. He had traded away his youth. Without youth, his body lost its divine resilience. His joints began to creak like old dry wood. His back ached when rain approached. Wounds that used to heal in a heartbeat now took days to scab over. The heavy armor of muscles that Strength Gu provided became a cage of lead that he had to drag around, step by agonizing step. The predicaments, observing from the darkness, grew smarter. They realized that brute force couldn't solve every riddle. A hammer is useless against water. They returned, but not as walls of stone or beasts of prey. They came as swamp predicaments, soft, yielding, treacherous. When Ren Zu roared and punched the swamp, the mud didn't break. It embraced his fist with a wet, sucking sound, pulling him deeper. The harder he struggled, the deeper he sank. They came as labyrinth predicaments, twisting paths of fog and illusion that led nowhere. Ren Zu ran, smashing through trees and shattering rocks, trying to run in a straight line, but the world twisted around him. He ran until his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, but he only found himself more lost, his strength draining with every futile step. Ren Zu collapsed onto a jagged rock, his body covered in scratches, mud, and the slime of failure. His mighty chest heaved, rattling with exhaustion. "Strength is not enough," he wept. "I have the power to move mountains, but I cannot stop the rain. I can kill 1,000 enemies, but I cannot defeat the mud beneath my feet. I have brute force, but I do not know how to use it." As his tears fell onto the cold earth, the second light descended. Wisdom Gu floated down, cool, composed, utterly silent. It moved with the grace of moonlight on a calm lake. "Brute force is the weapon of the beast," Wisdom Gu said. "Strength without direction is merely violence. It is a blind bull rushing into a burning fire. You have muscles, human, and you have power, but you lack the mind to command them. Can you help me? I can teach you how to think, how to plan, how to build, how to rule. I can show you that the world is not just a thing to be broken, but a system to be understood. But my price is high." Ren Zu touched his graying hair. "I have no more youth. I don't want your youth. Youth is rash and foolish. I want your middle age. Give me your prime, your stability, your greatest endurance. Give me the time between the impulsiveness of youth and the frailty of the end." Ren Zu looked at his scarred fists, then at the confusing, hostile world. He knew that if he continued relying only on his fists, he would eventually die of exhaustion in some forgotten corner. "Take it. Take my middle age." Wisdom Gu merged into his forehead. Instantly, the world changed. The mountains didn't move. The rivers didn't stop flowing. But in Ren Zu's eyes, they were no longer just obstacles. The fog in his mind cleared. The chaos reorganized itself into patterns, lines, structures. He looked at the vines strangling the trees. Before, he saw only weeds to be torn down. Now he saw fibers that could be woven into nets to catch fish or ropes to bind wood. He looked at the hard, useless stones. Before, he saw only tripping hazards. Now he saw flint that could be struck to create fire. A red flower that would drive away the cold and terrify beasts more than his roar ever could. He looked at the predicaments and realized he didn't need to fight them all. He could dig ditches to drain the swamps. He could mark trees with scratches to navigate the labyrinth. He understood the greatest truth of humanity, the truth that would separate him from the beasts forever. To overcome a predicament, you don't always need to break it. Sometimes you only need to solve it. That's chapter 4. Strength without direction is just violence. You can't punch every problem. Sometimes you have to think. For a long and glorious epoch, Ren Zu lived as the undisputed sovereign of the wilderness. He had the perfect union of strength and wisdom, the two greatest treasures a living being could hold. With strength in his flesh, he had the hands to shape chaos into order. With wisdom in his mind, he had the foresight to design a destiny of comfort. He built a magnificent palace of wood and stone, sturdy enough to withstand the fiercest storms, warm enough to mock the biting winds of winter. He tamed fire from the sky, cooking his food, savoring flavors that only a civilized being could appreciate. He wore stitched furs of conquered beasts, tigers, bears, wolves, woven with plant fibers. He walked through the wilderness, not as a survivor, but as a king. The predicaments still existed, lurking in the shadows, but they were no longer terrors. They were puzzles to solve, or annoyances to crush. Ren Zu felt complete. He looked at his strong hands and his sharp mind, and he felt eternal. But the flow of time is the most ruthless river in existence. It drowns mountains, erodes steel, grinds empires into dust. It doesn't care about kings. It can't be bribed, fought, or deceived. Ren Zu had sold his youth to strength. He had sold his middle age to wisdom. He had spent the currency of his life to buy survival. Now the debt was due, and his pockets were empty. The change didn't happen in a single day, but it struck with the accumulated weight of a collapsing mountain. One morning, the sun rose with indifferent brilliance. Ren Zu opened his eyes, intending to rise as he had done for 1,000 mornings before. His legs didn't obey. They trembled and collapsed, heavy, lifeless like rotten logs. His thoughts were sluggish. They moved through a thick gray fog, fragmenting before they could form a coherent picture. He couldn't remember why he wanted to get up. The sharp edge of his intellect had dulled into a rusty blade. He lifted his hands to his face. Where there was once iron-hard muscle, there was now withered, sagging flesh. His skin was spotted with age and thin like dried parchment. His hair, once a thick black mane flowing like a river, had thinned to a few wisps of snow-white straw. He was old. He called out to strength Gu. It emerged from his body, dull, lethargic, unimpressed. I cannot help you. I consume youth to create power. I burn vitality to forge steel. You have no youth left. Your muscles are dry. Your bones are hollow. Your blood is thin and cold. You are an empty vessel. But I fed you. I gave you everything. You paid for a service and the service has ended. Power requires a price, and you are bankrupt. You are weak. Desperate, he turned to Wisdom Gu. It floated out from his forehead, its light dim and flickering like a candle in the wind. There is no solution to the end of a lifespan. I consume the vigor of middle age to sharpen the mind. I burn the stability of the prime years to fuel the fires of thought. You have no middle age left. Your brain is shrinking. Your memories are fading like smoke. Your logic is decaying. To ask for wisdom now is like asking a fire to burn without wood. Don't leave me. I am your master. The two Gu hovered higher, drifting toward the open window where the blue sky beckoned. A sky that was vast, eternal, and full of new life. You are mistaken. We are the essence of heaven and earth. You are but a momentary vessel. You were a fertile field, and we harvested your youth. We harvested your prime. Now the soil is exhausted. You are a barren wasteland, filled with nothing but the dust of old age. There is nothing left for us to harvest. We are leaving. Ren Zu screamed, but the sound was merely a whisper. Strength Gu and Wisdom Gu flew out the window. They didn't look back. They ascended into the vast, endless sky, seeking new hosts, new transactions, fresh lives to consume. Ren Zu was left alone in his magnificent house, surrounded by the furs of beasts he could no longer hunt, trapped in a body that was failing him in every way. He had conquered the world, but in doing so, he had spent his life. Abandoned by the very powers that made him great, he was just an old, dying man lying in the dust of his own past. That's chapter 5. Power doesn't stay. It rents from you. When you can't pay anymore, it evicts you without notice. The Gu aren't your friends. They're merchants. And you're just the field they harvest. Ren Zu lay in the dust of his own magnificent hall, a ruin within a ruin. The furs of the 9-colored tigers were moth-eaten and tattered. The great hearth, once home to a fire that rivaled the sun, was now a grave of cold, gray ash. The sturdy roof of ironwood groaned under the weight of the years, threatening to collapse and bury its creator. He was a king without a crown, reduced to a trembling heap of brittle bones and decaying flesh. His breath came in shallow, rattling gasps. As the crimson sun began to dip below the horizon, the darkness in the corners began to stir. The predicaments had returned. They had been waiting for this moment for an epoch, held back by the iron fist of strength and the sharp blade of wisdom. Now, sensing the vacuum of power, they flooded back. These weren't the small, clumsy mud monsters of his youth. These were ancient, towering horrors that had grown fat on the despair of the world. The predicament of regret took the form of a weeping black mist, swirling with faces of the past, opportunities missed, words left unspoken, the vibrant days of youth that would never return. It whispered into Ren Zu's ear, "You traded your life for a house of wood. Was it worth it?" The predicament of pain seeped from the floorboards, a creature of jagged glass and rusting iron, grinding against itself. Your joints burn, your lungs fail. I will be your only companion for your final hours. Blocking the door stood the predicament of death. It was a towering silence, a void in the shape of a wolf that swallowed all light. It didn't speak, it merely waited. They surrounded him, their laughter sounding like the grinding of millstones crushing bone. Look at him. He borrowed power from heaven and earth to play God, but the great Tao is fair. All debts must be paid. He traded his life for glory, and now he has neither. Ren Zu watched them approach with dim, cloudy eyes. He tried to summon the will to fight, to roar one last time, but his spirit was as broken as his spine. He couldn't lift a stone. He couldn't think of a plan. The walls of his achievements were crumbling. It ends here, Ren Zu thought. I was born in the sea, and I will die in the dark. He closed his eyes, preparing for the tear of fangs. Then a tiny, insignificant presence made itself known. It was the third Gu, the one he had ignored. The one that looked like a dying ember in a pile of cold ash, so faint it was almost invisible against the gathering night. "Human," it whispered. Its voice wasn't a boom like strength or a chime like wisdom. It was faint, fragile, easily drowned out. It sounded like the first heartbeat of a newborn. "Don't close your eyes." Ren Zu cracked one crusted eyelid open. "Go away. I have nothing left for you. Strength took my youth. Wisdom took my prime. I'm old. I'm dying. Go find another fool to drain." The small Gu didn't leave. It hovered closer, its light pulsing with a stubborn, weak rhythm, refusing to be extinguished. I don't eat time. I don't need the reckless vigor of youth or the cold calculation of your prime. I have no use for your muscles or your brain. Then what could I possibly have left that's of value? The Gu hovered directly over his chest. You have one thing left, the most important thing. I need your heart. My heart? It's full of fear, heavy with regret, broken by loss, stained with the blood of beasts and the tears of loneliness. Why would you want such a broken thing? If you don't give it to me, you'll die here. But if you give it to me, you might find a way to live. Ren Zu looked at the darkness closing in. He looked at the useless wealth around him, the cold hearth, the silent walls. He smiled a toothless, sad smile. Take it. It's of no use to me anymore. It hurts too much to keep it. With the last reserve of his spiritual energy, Ren Zu reached into his chest, not with his hands, but with his will. He offered the very core of his being, the seat of his emotions, to the tiny, dim Gu. The moment the Gu touched his heart, the laws of the world seemed to suspend. The wind stopped howling. The laughter of the predicaments froze in their throats. Even the dust motes hanging in the air seemed to pause. The tiny, dim speck erupted, not with the violent heat of strength which burned forests and shattered mountains, not with the cold, crystalline calculation of wisdom, which froze the world into logic and patterns. It burned with a brilliant, pure white light, warm yet piercing, soft as a mother's touch, yet harder than diamond. It was the light of the first sunrise after a long, dark winter, the promise that the night is not eternal. The light flooded the wilderness. It blasted through the roof, piercing the storm clouds and connecting earth to heaven. It turned night instantly into day. When the white light touched the predicaments, they screamed, "It burns! It burns worse than fire! It's hope! It's hope Gu!" The predicament of pain shattered. The predicament of regret dissolved like smoke. The predicament of death recoiled, covering its face, unable to bear the brilliance. For in the face of true hope, the fear of death loses its grip. Retreat. We can fight strength, for strength can be exhausted. We can corrupt wisdom, for wisdom can be tricked. But we cannot touch hope. Hope creates a path where there is none. The predicaments fled, disappearing into the darkest cracks of the world, terrified of the light that refused to acknowledge their power. Ren Zu stood up. His back was still hunched, his skin still wrinkled, his muscles still withered. Hope Gu didn't return his youth or his physical power, but his eyes burned with a fire brighter than the sun, deeper than the sea, stronger than all the steel in the world. He stood amidst the ruins of his life, holding Hope Gu in his chest where his heart used to be. The fear was gone. The regret was silenced. In their place was a limitless, bounding energy that transcended the physical body. He realized then the first and greatest truth of humanity. Strength may fade into exhaustion. Wisdom may fail in the face of chaos. But as long as a human has hope in their heart, they can face any predicament and survive. Ren Zu walked out of his shelter, stepping over the threshold of his past glory. He walked into the wind, his white hair blowing behind him like a banner of defiance. He walked toward the unknown horizon, no longer afraid. That's Chapter 6. Hope isn't about being strong or smart. It's about being stubborn. It's about taking one more step when your legs don't work. And the predicaments? They can handle everything except that. Ren Zu had Hope Gu now, and with it, he had escaped the predicaments. But here's the thing about hope. It's great for your spirit, terrible for your body. Hope can't stop the flow of time. Time is a blade that sharpens itself on the flesh of mortals. Without the crimson fire of strength Gu to forge his body into iron, and without the cool crystal of wisdom Gu to guide his choices with efficiency, Ren Zu was left defenseless against the elements. He grew old with terrifying speed. His teeth loosened and fell out. He was forced to swallow water and mush, his body starving even as he ate. His eyes grew dim and cloudy. The vibrant world faded into gray shadows. His back bent under the invisible weight of the sky. He could feel death approaching, not as a monster or a beast, but as a cold, inevitable silence that seeped into his marrow. Finally, the day came when Ren Zu could walk no further. He collapsed in a desolate field of dry grass, his chest heaving with shallow, rattling breaths. He closed his eyes, waiting for the final darkness. Hope Gu jumped out of his chest, vibrating with anxiety. "Human, wake up. You must not die. You are my house. My shell. If you die, your heart will stop beating, and I will vanish into nothingness." Ren Zu opened his cloudy eyes. Who in this world truly wishes to die? I want to live. I yearn to breathe, but heaven and earth want me dead. My body is a rotting log. I have no choice. No! There's no absolute dead end in this world. There's always hope in everything. Catch lifespan. Gu! You can regain your youth! Ren Zu shook his head. I've heard the legends of lifespan, Gu. It's the most elusive spirit in creation. When it stays still, it becomes one with the earth and no eye can detect it. When it flies, it moves faster than lightning. It slips through fingers like water. Even when I had the mountain-moving power of strength and the star-calculating mind of wisdom, I couldn't catch it. Now I'm old and weak. How can I possibly succeed? Hope Gu flared brighter. In the northwest corner of this savage world, there stands a mountain that pierces the clouds. Inside a hidden cave live a pair of mystical Gu worms, one perfectly round, one perfectly square. They are the masters of order. Subdue them, and there is no Gu in this world you cannot catch. Ren Zu's dim eyes suddenly lit up. The fire of ambition, which he thought had turned to ash, sparked once more. If there's even a sliver of a chance, then I must try. That's chapter 7. Even a dying man can find a reason to stand up. Hope doesn't need to be realistic. It just needs to exist. With the last embers of his life burning, only because Hope Gu kept them lit, Ren Zu turned toward the northwest. He didn't walk as a conqueror. He dragged himself as a beggar. The journey was a gauntlet of suffering. He traversed forests of black thorns that tore at his ragged clothes and flayed his withered skin. He weathered storms where rain fell like shards of ice, soaking into his brittle bones and turning his marrow to frost. Every step was a battle against gravity. Every breath was a war against exhaustion. But whenever his legs buckled and his eyes sought the comfort of eternal sleep, Hope Gu pulsed warm and bright against his ribs, forcing him to take just one more step. Finally, the mountain appeared. A titan of stone, a spear of gray rock piercing the clouds. It was steep, treacherous, unforgiving. No path, only jagged cliffs and vertical walls. Ren Zu looked at his trembling hands, then at the peak. No strength Gu to leap up the cliffs, no wisdom Gu to find the easiest route, only flesh. He began to climb. He dug his fingernails into the cracks, pulling his dead weight up inch by agonizing inch. By the time he reached the cave entrance near the peak, his fingernails had been torn away entirely, leaving trails of red on the gray stone. He was moving on spirit alone. He collapsed onto the ledge and crawled into the mouth of the cave. The transition was instant. He moved from blinding sunlight into a world of absolute suffocating void. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was thick, heavy, absolute, a solid wall pressing against his eyes. He held his hand up to his face and saw nothing. It was as if he had ceased to exist. He stumbled forward. Bang! His forehead collided with a stalactite. Crash! His foot caught on a twisted root of stone. He walked blindly, bruising his fragile body, breaking his skin on unseen obstacles. No north, no south, no up, no down. A speck of dust floating in a void. The darkness whispered that he was foolish, that he was lost, that he should just lie down and let the end come. Just as his consciousness began to fade, two voices resonated from the darkness. They didn't sound human. They sounded like the ancient laws of the world speaking. The first voice was rigid, hard, unyielding, echoing like the striking of a grand bell. Human, are you here to catch us? Go back. This is the domain of order, and you are a creature of chaos. Even if you still possess the mountain-moving power of strength Gu, you could not catch us by force in this darkness. The second voice was sharp, precise, cutting, echoing like the snapping of a whip. Human, leave. We will not take your life, for time will do that soon enough. Even if you still possess the scheming mind of wisdom Gu, you could not find us in this void. We are formless to the blind. Ren Zu lay on the cold, hard ground, gasping for air. Strength and wisdom left me long ago. I'm old. I'm at my wit's end. I have no power to force you and no mind to trick you. He slowly pushed himself up, his trembling arms struggling to hold his weight. But as long as I have hope in my heart, I will not turn back. I will not give up. The voices went silent. The darkness seemed to hold its breath. Then the first voice spoke again, tinged with a strange note of respect. I understand. I smell it on you. You have given your entire heart to Hope Gu. You are stubborn. You are illogical. The second voice continued. In that case, we will give you a chance. We are the guardians of order, and order must be followed. We are standing right in front of you. If you can speak our names correctly, we will submit to you. That's chapter 8. Stubbornness isn't always a vice. Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps you alive. And even the cold, rigid forces of order have to respect someone who won't quit. Chapter 9. The Name of the Gu, Part 1. Say your names. The request echoed in Ren Zu's mind, more terrifying than any roar of a beast. The language of the world contained 10,000 characters and millions of of combinations. There were names for every star in the sky, every drop of water in the ocean, every emotion in the human heart. Guessing two specific names in absolute darkness, without a single clue, was harder than finding a specific needle in the depths of the eastern sea. Panic clawed at his throat. He whispered to Hope Gu, "You guided me here. Surely you must know their names." Hope Gu flickered weakly. "I don't know. I can guide you to the destination, and I can give you the courage to knock on the door, but I don't hold the key. I only know where they are. I don't know who they are." Ren Zu had no choice. He began to guess. Are you light? No. Are you darkness? No. Are you greatness? Power? Glory? Destiny? Fortune? No, 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 no. He guessed for days that bled into nights. He became thirsty, his tongue swelling in his mouth like a dry sponge. He became hungry, his stomach twisting into painful knots. His voice grew hoarse, turning from a shout to a rasp, finally to a broken whisper. Eventually, silence reclaimed the cave. Ren Zu collapsed. He lay on his back, limbs spread on the freezing stone. He was dying. His breath was weak, fluttering like a candle flame in a gust of wind. His consciousness began to fade. "Human," the rigid voice spoke, sounding almost pitying. "You are almost dead. Your persistence is admirable, but your body is dust. We will let you go. Use your remaining time to crawl out and take one last look at the world." Ren Zu's fingers twitched. The temptation to give up was sweet, like warm honey, to simply close his eyes and sleep. But his hand moved, slowly, painfully. He clenched his fist over his chest. "No. Even if I die, even if I rot in this darkness, I will not give up hope." Inside his chest, Hope Gu heard this declaration. It felt the unyielding spirit of its host. It was deeply touched. "Human!" it cried out. Suddenly it erupted, not with a flicker or a glow. It exploded with blinding, transcendent radiance. But Ren Zu was too old, his body too broken, the cavern too vast. The light of hope couldn't pierce the infinite darkness. It couldn't illuminate the walls or reveal the hidden forms of the Gu. It could only illuminate one thing, Ren Zu himself. In that sea of blackness, Ren Zu's chest became a beacon of white light. He looked down at himself. He saw his withered hands, his bruised knees, the path of blood he had dragged behind him. And in that light, seeing his own broken form, Ren Zu felt a sudden, thunderous surge of clarity. He realized that he was not infinite. He was defined. He had a shape. He had limits. Why did he fall when he tripped? Gravity. Why did he bleed when he struck stone? Flesh is softer than rock. Why was he dying? Life has a beginning and an end. To catch a Gu, you must understand the nature of the world. The world wasn't a chaotic mess of random events. It was a structure, built on boundaries, built on standards. To climb a mountain, you must follow the path. To exist, you must follow the laws. With his final breath, Ren Zu whispered a single word: regulation. For a heartbeat, there was no sound. The darkness of the cavern seemed to recoil, as if the word itself was a torch that burned the shadows. Then, a long, deep sigh echoed from the void, the sound of a locked door finally finding its key. "Human, I admire your perseverance. To find order in chaos and to find the name in the silence, you have guessed correctly. I am Regulation Gu." From the absolute darkness, a portion of the blackness condensed. A Gu worm flew out of the void. It moved in perfect straight lines, up, over, down. It didn't flutter or meander. It landed precisely in Ren Zu's blood-stained palm. It was perfectly square, black iron, sharp edges, no curves. The physical manifestation of boundaries, limits, and standards. "Since you have spoken my true name, I am bound by the laws of the great Tao to obey your commands. I can help you set limits, build walls, define what is right and wrong." Ren Zu's fingers curled around the cold, hard body of the Gu. "Then help me catch Lifespan Gu." Regulation Gu didn't move. "I cannot do that alone. I am only half of the law. Look at me. I am square. I am rigid. I can create a cage, but not the door. I can set the boundary, but not the path. I am the standard, but I lack the method. Without my brother, the round one, the system is incomplete. I am the square that does not change. He is the round that adapts. Without the round, the square cannot roll. To catch the elusive Lifespan Gu, you need a net that is both firm like a wall and flexible like a web. You need both. That's chapter 9. The world has rules, boundaries, limits. You can't just want something. You have to understand the shape of the cage you're trying to build. And sometimes, half the answer isn't enough. Ren Zu lay paralyzed on the floor. He held the cold, sharp square in one hand. He had spent his youth for strength, his prime for wisdom, his final breath for regulation. And it wasn't enough. He needed the round, the thing that was flexible, that governed how things moved. "Who is he? What is his name?" Regulation Gu fell silent. From deeper in the darkness, the second voice, the sharp, cutting voice from before, laughed softly. "You guessed the square, human, but can you guess the round? I am right here. I am the method. I am the adaptation. But unless you call my true name, I will remain formless. Ren Zu's thoughts drifted like smoke. He tried to think, to plan, but without wisdom Gu, his mind was a swamp. He couldn't form complex thoughts. He only had feelings. The square in his hand dug into his palm. It hurt. It was hard. It was stuck. He tried to push it with his thumb, but it wouldn't budge. Stubborn, a dead stone. Regulation is a stone, he thought. It stops, it blocks. But he needed to catch time. Time doesn't stop. Time runs. Time flies. You can't catch a flying bird with a sitting stone. What moves? He strained his dim eyes against the darkness. He looked down at his chest. Hope Gu was pulsating there. Thump, 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 thump. The light wasn't a block. It didn't have sharp edges. It washed over his hands like water. It glowed in a soft, expanding shape. It was round. Ren Zu stared at the round halo of light. A memory flashed. Not a thought, but a picture. A pebble on a hill, round. When the wind blew, it rolled down to the valley. The sun, round. It rolled across the sky every day. A drop of water, round. It ran through his fingers. Round things run, round things roll. The square is the stop. The other is the go. The word bubbled up from his soul, unbidden. Rules. The darkness trembled. The sharp, cutting voice laughed. Not a complex laugh, but a sound of bright, simple delight, like a child finding a hidden toy. Correct. You feel it, don't you? The square stands, but the circle spins. Without rules, the world is just a pile of rocks. I am the flow. I am the cycle. I am rules Gu. From the void, a second shape condensed. Not heavy or sharp like the block in his left hand. Smooth, flowing white jade. Perfectly round. No corners to get stuck. It felt like a wheel waiting to turn. It landed gently in Ren Zu's right hand. Ren Zu held the square in one hand and the round in the other. One to stop, one to move. Finally, he was complete. That's chapter 10. You need both halves, the wall and the door, the law and the method. One without the other is just frustration. The moment the word left Ren Zu's lips, the suffocating darkness peeled away. Light flooded the space, pure, dazzling, ancient. When his eyes adjusted, he saw them. Two Gu worms floating in the void, illuminated by their own internal radiance. The one on the left was cubic, a perfect block of darkness that somehow shone. Edges razor sharp, corners precise. It exuded cold, hard rigidity, unbending, unyielding, absolute. A prison, a wall, a shield. Regulation Gu. The one on the right was spherical, a flawless pearl of white jade, rotating gently. No edges, no beginning, no end. Smooth, fluid, adaptable. A wheel, a coin, a path. Rules Gu. They spoke in unison. No matter who it is, beast, human, or ghost, as long as they know our true names, we will listen to them. The great Tao is impartial. We do not choose our master based on strength or virtue. We choose based on knowledge. They hovered closer. Human, since you have divined our names from the chaos, we will be at your service. We are the tools, and you are the artisan. But just as his fingers brushed their aura, they recoiled slightly. They issued a grave warning. You must remember one thing. This is the most important rule of all. It is strictly forbidden to let others know of our names. Why? Is glory not meant to be shared? Power shared is power lost. We are the definition of order. If only you know the rules, you are the arbiter. If only you know the regulations, you are the king. But the more people that know our names, the more people we have to obey. If everyone knows the rules, everyone can use the rules. If everyone knows the regulations, everyone can navigate the regulations. If the secret spreads, your command over us dilutes. If the whole world learns our names, we will no longer be your servants. We will be the world's common law, and you will be nothing special. Ren Zu's eyes widened. A chill that had nothing to do with death ran down his spine. Rules and regulations weren't loyal. They were mercenaries of logic. They didn't care who gave the order, only that the order giver knew their nature. He clenched his jaw. I understand. I will be the only one. That's chapter 11. Secrets are power. Knowledge is leverage. The moment you share what you know, you lose control of it. And some things are too dangerous to let out. Ren Zu sat on the cold floor, still dying, still old, but now holding the two halves of order in his trembling palms. In his left hand, regulation Gu, black, heavy, cold, sharp. In his right hand, rules Gu, white, light, warm, smooth. As the two Gu sensed each other's proximity, a closeness that perhaps hadn't occurred since the dawn of time, a strange, resonant vibration began to hum through the air. It started in his hands, traveled up his withered arms, past his aching shoulders, and settled deep into his chest. It wasn't the fiery, explosive rush of strength, a roaring furnace that made him want to scream and conquer and break things. Strength was wild, untamed, exhausting. It wasn't the cool, detached stream of wisdom, a palace of ice that dissected the world into cold facts. Wisdom was sharp, arrogant, distant. This was different, terrifyingly steady. Thump, 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 thump. It pulsed with rhythmic, mechanical perfection. A heartbeat that couldn't skip, a drum that wouldn't miss a beat. The sound of 10,000 ironclad soldiers marching in perfect unison. The sound of massive stone gears turning the axis of the heavens. The hum of a great machine waking up. The sound of order. Human, the two Gu spoke in unison, the rigid bass of regulation and the fluid alto of rules blending into a singular commanding tone. You hold the circle and the square, the duality of the great Tao, the solid earth and the rolling sky, the cup and the water, the law and the method. Now you must use us. How? Look at me. I'm old. My hands shake. My legs are useless. I can't run. I can't chase lifespan Gu. You do not chase. Chasing is for beasts. Wolves chase deer. Hawks chase rabbits. They use their bodies, their sweat and blood. That is the way of the savage. Humans make the world adapt to them. Humans use tools. Weave us. Combine the limit with the method. Weave the square into the round. Ren Zu's hands moved instinctively. He brought his hands together over his chest, pressing the glowing white round onto the abyssal black square. The two Gu dissolved. They became streaks of blinding black and white light, twisting around each other like two ancient snakes. The black light shot out first, rigid, straight lines, vertical and absolute. The warp, the boundaries. Here you must stop. The white light followed instantly, curving, flexible loops, spiraling and knotting around the black lines. The weft, the connections. Here is the way through. In Ren Zu's hands, the light solidified into a physical object, the net of law. A grid of crystallized starlight, etched with the secrets of the great Tao. It rippled with terrifying authority. Ren Zu gripped the net. Although he was still an old, dying man with weak muscles and rattling lungs, he felt a sense of control he had never possessed. Strength Gu could conquer a tiger. Wisdom Gu could outsmart a fox. But this net of law, could conquer the world itself. It could tame the river, measure the mountain, bind strength and wisdom. That's chapter 12. Tools are what make humans different. We don't adapt to the world. We make the world adapt to us. A net isn't about being stronger than the fish. It's about being smarter than the water. Ren Zu cast the net into the void, where the invisible river of time flowed. Regulation Gu activated, expanding the black warp. It set the boundary, turning the infinite sky into a closed room. Escape is prohibited. Rules Gu activated, spinning the white weft. It set the path, turning the chaotic currents of time into a predictable funnel. All roads lead to the center. The net trawled the river of time. The struggle was immense. The river roared, trying to tear the net apart with the weight of history. Lifespan Gu, elusive spirits of time, darted like golden fish, desperate to evade capture. The net tried to snare a massive 1,000-year lifespan Gu, but the beast of time was too strong. It smashed through the regulations. Ren Zu's understanding of the law was still too shallow. The net swiped at a swift 100-year lifespan Gu, but it was too fast. It slipped through a gap in the rules, finding a loophole Ren Zu hadn't closed. The struggle against the river of time was difficult, even for the manifestations of law, but the net wouldn't return empty. Finally, the black and white lights tightened. The net flew back into Ren Zu's hands. Entangled in the mesh of order, unable to phase through the absolute boundaries of regulation or dodge the curving paths of rules, was a captive. An 80-year lifespan Gu, small, squirming, made of amber light, smelling of ancient dust and fresh rain simultaneously. Ren Zu stared at it. He was already 100 years old, a withered husk on the brink of death. He didn't complain that it wasn't a millennium. He didn't weep that it wasn't a century. To a man dying of thirst, a cup of water is worth more than an ocean. He brought the Gu to his cracked lips and consumed it. The effect was instantaneous. Fire roared in his belly, rushing through his collapsed veins like a flood through a dry canyon. The deep wrinkles on his face smoothed out and vanished. His frail limbs swelled with muscle. His sparse gray hair fell out, replaced by a thick, lustrous mane of raven black. His heart gave a massive, powerful beat, echoing like a war drum. With a belly flop that defied gravity, Ren Zu jumped to his feet. He stood tall, spine straight as a spear. He looked at his hands, large, smooth, powerful. He touched his face, firm and unblemished. The dying old man was gone. Staring back at him was a young man with sharp eyes and a body brimming with potential. He had defeated the great Tao cycle. He had regained the body of a 20-year-old. That's chapter 13. Value is relative. A 1,000-year Gu means nothing to a corpse. An 80-year Gu means everything to a dying man. Don't despise the small victory. It might be the only one you get. Ren Zu stood in the hidden valley, the echoes of his transformation still vibrating in the air. Only moments ago, he had been a skeleton wrapped in parchment-thin skin. Now he was a god. He flexed his fingers, watching tendons ripple beneath skin as smooth as white jade. His heart beat against his ribs like a war drum, sending hot, thick blood rushing through his veins. He threw his head back and laughed. "I am alive! I am alive!" It wasn't the relief of a survivor. It was the arrogance of a conqueror. But as the euphoria settled, the human heart, that eternal abyss which can never be filled, began to calculate. 80 years. It seems like an eternity. But the sun rises and sets. The moon waxes and wanes. 80 years will pass in the blink of an eye. I can never go back to that cold, helpless darkness. 80 years isn't enough. 800 years isn't enough. A greedy smile spread across his handsome face. Why stop at one? If the net works once, it'll work 1,000 times. If I catch 10 lifespan Gu, I'll have 800 years. If I catch 100, I'll have 8,000. I can pile them into a mountain of time. Go, catch me another lifespan Gu. Catch them all. I will be eternal. The two Gu didn't move. Why do you not move? I possess your name. I am your master. Obey me. Human, you have deeply misunderstood our relationship. We are not slaves. We are not dogs that fetch a stick. We are principles. We do not serve a master's whim. We serve the logic of the world. Every time you command us, it is not merely an action, it is a legislation. You are the first human and you hold the first law. Therefore, every order you give creates a precedent. It adds a rule and a regulation to the fabric of reality. To do something once is an event. To do it twice is a pattern. To do it by command of the law is a statute. When we caught the lifespan Gu for you, that was your first order. That action is now recorded in the great Tao. Therefore, the new regulation is established and etched into the world. We will not repeatedly catch the same Gu for you. Ren Zu's smile froze. What? You refuse? We do not refuse. We obey. We obey the law that you created by using us. If you could catch lifespan Gu endlessly, time would lose its meaning. Value comes from scarcity. If gold were as common as mud, it would be worthless. If life were infinite, it would be stagnant. We are the engines of order, not the mills of chaos. A wall that stretches forever is not a room. It is a void. Ren Zu stood paralyzed. He looked at his perfect body. A moment ago, he thought he was the master of the world. He thought he held the ultimate cheat code. He realized now that rules and regulations were not infinite genies. They were a system of restriction, a cage made of logic. When he used them to trap the lifespan Gu, he had also trapped himself. He had no choice but to accept. I understand. I cannot act endlessly. I must choose more calmly. I must act strategically. That's chapter 14. Limits aren't cruelty. They're what give things meaning. An infinite supply of anything makes it worthless, even life. Ren Zu stood amidst the silence of the valley, the rejection echoing in his mind. We will not repeatedly catch the same Gu for you. For a lesser man, this might have been a crushing blow. But Ren Zu was the first human. His spirit was a bottomless abyss of desire. If the door to eternal life was barred, he would simply kick down the door to absolute power. If I cannot live forever, then I will own everything while I am alive. Capture all the other Gu in the world for me. I want the flying ones, the swimming ones, the burning ones, the freezing ones. I want the 10,000 beings of the great Tao to bow before me. The command was given. Rules and regulation accepted the order. To them, the scale didn't matter. Catching a single firefly or capturing the stars, it was all just applying the correct formula. Suddenly, the world began to tremble. Rule's Gu shot out of Ren Zu's right hand. It didn't fly like a bird. It ascended like a god. It pierced the clouds, rising higher and higher until it reached the zenith. There, it exploded into blinding brilliance. The small white sphere expanded, larger than a mountain, larger than an ocean. It transformed into a gigantic, perfect circle of white light, stretching from the eastern horizon to the western sunset. The round sky, infinite possibilities, the turning of seasons, the cycle of the stars. Simultaneously, regulation Gu shot out of Ren Zu's left hand. It plunged downward, burying itself deep in the bedrock. It erupted. A profound abyssal darkness spread out. The black cube expanded, flattening and stretching into a colossal square of black light, covering the four corners of the world. The square earth, boundaries, stability, the unmovable foundation. The two lights moved to merge. The white circle descended. The black square rose, clang. They locked together. The warp and weft of the universe collided. The net of heaven and earth enveloped the entire world. No mountain high enough to pierce it. No ocean deep enough to hide beneath it. No cave dark enough to obscure it. The net began to shrink. It dredged the world. It passed through volcanoes, scooping up raging fire Gu. It passed through storm clouds, snagging elusive lightning Gu. It swept through the the deepest trenches of the sea, collecting silent water Gu. The wind howled as wind Gu were stripped from the air. The forests went silent as strength Gu and beast skin Gu were pulled from the beasts. With a massive swoosh that sounded like the world inhaling a breath, the net shrunk rapidly, from the size of a continent to a city, then a house, then a small bundle. It returned to Ren Zu's hands. The weight wasn't physical, it was the weight of authority. Inside the shimmering mesh of law, a chaotic, swirling galaxy of light held thousands upon thousands of Gu worms. I have done it. With this, all the Gu belong to me. I control the elements. I control the emotions. From now on, I am not just a human. I am the ruler of the world. Overwhelmed by triumph, Ren Zu forgot the nature of the creatures he held. These were living spirits of the great Tao, wild, untamed. He only saw loot. With greedy, trembling fingers, he pulled open the drawstring to inspect his kingdom. Come out, let me see my subjects. He didn't unleash a parade. He unleashed a catastrophe. The sound was deafening, a million hornets waking up at once. The Gu inside the net had been captured, but not tamed. They were wild. They were angry. And suddenly they saw the open sky. A massive cloud of insects erupted from the opening. Fire Gu shot out like meteors, scorching Ren Zu's hair. Water Gu dissolved into mist, soaking his clothes. Wind Gu tore out of his grip, creating a hurricane. Poison Gu hissed, releasing toxic clouds. They didn't obey him. They trampled him in their rush for freedom. No, stop, Ren Zu screamed, frantically trying to grab them. He grabbed a Thunder Gu. It shocked him. He grabbed a Blade Gu. It cut his palm. They scattered into the wind, burrowing into the ground, hiding in clouds, diving into the sea. The treasure trove of the world vanished in the blink of an eye. When he finally sealed the mesh, the massive galaxy of lights was gone. Only 5 Gu remained inside. Why is this? You are rules and regulations. You are the law. Why did they run? Why did they not obey me? Human, you are confused by your own greed. The world has over 10,000 Gu, each with different tempers, different diets, different wills. Some eat wind, some drink dew, some feed on desire. You have no strength to suppress them, no wisdom to scheme against them, no heart to move them. We can only capture Gu for you. Capturing is merely the act of confinement, but to subdue them is a spiritual act. You have to rely on yourself to refine them, to feed them, to break their wills. We provided the cage, but you left the door open before putting on the chains. A net can hold a fish, but it cannot make the fish obey the fisherman. The 2 Gu began to glow with a new restrictive light. This was your second order. The failure was caused by excess. Therefore, to preserve the balance of the world, we must write a new law. From now on, we can only catch 1 Gu for you at a time. Greed leads to loss. Precision leads to gain. Ren Zu looked at the limp net in his hands. He had wanted everything, and because of that, he had almost nothing. One at a time, so be it. That's chapter 15. Greed is a trap. You reach for everything, and your hands are too full to hold anything. A net is just a net. It doesn't tame what it catches. That part is on you. Ren Zu looked inside the net. 5 Gu remained. Among them, he saw 2 familiar figures. One was a beetle of dark, heavy bronze, scarred from 1,000 battles, yet shining with indomitable luster. Strength Gu. The other was a delicate, crystalline butterfly, wings shimmering with kaleidoscopic light. Wisdom Gu. Strength Gu. Do you recognize me? I am the human you abandoned. You left me when my muscles withered and my bones grew brittle. You said I had nothing left to offer you. Look at us now. I am young again. I am the master of the net of law. And you? You are my prisoner. Do you have any regrets? Strength Gu buzzed its wings, deep and aggressive, like the growl of a tiger. Human, you are arrogant, but your arrogance is built on sand. I have no regrets. I didn't leave because I was forced away by time. I left because I wanted to leave, because you became weak, and strength has no place in the house of weakness. A cage can hold a tiger, but a cage cannot make the tiger hunt for you. You want to subdue me? I only succumb to those stronger than me. Ren Zu felt a flash of anger, but he knew Strength Gu was right. However, Strength Gu rumbled, its tone shifting from disdain to negotiation. I am hungry, and you are full. We can make a deal again. Give me your youth. Feed me your prime years, your endless energy. If you pay me, I will temporarily obey you. I will lend you my power until your youth runs dry. Ren Zu froze. He looked at his smooth, unscarred hands. He touched his face, taut skin, sharp jawline. He had fought the river of time, crawled through absolute darkness, risked his soul to get this back. Was he about to lose it again? No, I can't. I just got it back. But then a howl echoed from the wilderness. The shadows of predicaments lurked in the forest. The jagged rocks could break a man's leg. The towering beasts treated humans as snacks. Without strength, his youth was nothing but a tender meal for the world to devour. What is the point of being young if you're dead? What is the point of having time if you have no power to protect it? I accept. The contract was sealed. His smooth porcelain skin coarsened. The rosy glow faded. Gray streaks appeared at his temples, spreading like frost on midnight grass. The boundless energy of the 20-year-old settled down, condensed from a raging fire into a steady bed of coals. Ren Zu transformed from a vibrant youth into a stoic middle-aged man. Strength Gu landed on his shoulder. His knees buckled slightly, but he stood firm. His muscles swelled, hard as iron. He clenched his fist. The air popped. I have lost my youth, but I have gained the power to rule. That's chapter 16. Sometimes survival means sacrificing what you just fought to get. Youth is beautiful, but it's also fragile. Strength is ugly, but it keeps you alive. Choose. Ren Zu turned to Wisdom Gu. We meet again. You left me when I was old and useless. Do you have any regrets now that you are my prisoner? Look at me. I have subdued rules and regulations. I have subdued strength. If you succumb to me now, I will return your freedom. I will let you fly, as long as you fly for me. Wisdom Gu fluttered its wings, scattering dust of light that dissolved into the air like complex equations. Human, you are wrong. You act as if I betrayed you. But wisdom owes no loyalty to the foolish. I did not leave because I was forced to. I left because I chose to. You want to subdue me? That is impossible. Strength may bow to a stronger fist, but wisdom only bows to a sharper mind. You have caught my body, but you cannot catch my allegiance. We can make a deal again. Give me your middle age. Feed me your maturity, your stability. If you pay me, I will guide you until your hair turns white. Ren Zu remembered the past. He remembered sitting in the dirt, surrounded by predicaments, screaming for wisdom, only to watch it fly away because he had nothing left to trade. If he sold his middle age, he would become old instantly. And once he was old, strength would find him weak and leave. Wisdom would find him slow and leave. He would be back at the start, dying, alone, pathetic. I will not deal. I want your service for free. Then you will have nothing. Then you will have nothing. I will not let you go. You will stay in this net forever. A mind that cannot explore is a dead mind. Let us see who breaks first. For the first time, Wisdom Gu became anxious. It looked at the net of law, black lines of regulation, absolute walls, white loops of rules, infinite mazes. It flew left, hit a wall, flew right, hit a loop, trapped. For a creature defined by curiosity and flow, imprisonment was a fate worse than death. It spun around frantically, running millions of simulations. But without data, wisdom couldn't solve the puzzle. Reluctantly, it dimmed its light in submission. All right, human, you win. I will make a concession. As long as you tell me what method you used to capture me, I will admit total defeat. I will not take your middle age. I will simply be at your disposal to serve you as the smartest advisor in the world. Ren Zu's heart leaped. To have wisdom without paying the price? This was the best outcome imaginable. His ego swelled. He forgot the warnings. He wanted to brag. It was simple. I used rules Gu and regulation Gu to capture you. Together, they formed the net of law. The words left his mouth. The secret was out. Wisdom, Gu froze. Then it exploded with light. Not surrender, but revelation. I remember it now. So that is what they are called. Rules and regulations. The square and the circle. Human, you are a fool. Do you not know? Knowledge is power. When I did not know what trapped me, I was helpless. I saw only walls. But now that I know their names, I know their nature. I know that rules must follow a path. I know that regulations must have a limit. And if I know the logic, I can find the loophole. Wisdom Gu turned into a flash of pure thought. It flew straight at the seemingly solid wall of the net. Before, it would have bounced off. But now, it saw the microscopic gap where the rule connected to the regulation. It saw the flaw in the logic, the exception to the rule. Zip. It flew right through the mesh as if it weren't even there. It vanished into thin air, free forever. Rules and regulation Gu vibrated violently. We told you. We warned you. Our names must be known by you alone. Now that Wisdom Gu knows our names, it spells trouble for all eternity. Wisdom is the natural enemy of order. There is no law that a smart enough mind cannot break. Ren Zu stood stunned. He hadn't won. He had been played. Wisdom had used his own vanity against him. That's chapter 17. Ego is expensive. Bragging costs more than you think. And wisdom? It doesn't play fair. It never has. Ren Zu stood alone in the vast, silent valley. The wind howled, carrying the phantom echoes of Wisdom Gu's mocking laughter. He had been tricked. He had possessed the most valuable treasure, his youth, and traded it away for strength. Then he had tried to outsmart wisdom, only to be played like a fool. He looked down at his hands. Clutched in his grip was the net of law. Only moments ago, it had spanned the horizon, glowing with the majesty of the round sky and square earth. Now it was limp, light, a dead snake. But as he squeezed the mesh, he felt a vibration, faint, distinct, unsettling. At the very bottom of the net, where the black warp of regulation and the white weft of rules knotted together, something remained. Something. The first was belief Gu. It floated on the left, a seed made of pure, unadulterated light. It didn't flicker. It burned with a steady, warm, blinding radiance. As Ren Zu looked at it, his anger melted away, replaced by a strange, narcotic comfort. A voice whispered that everything would be all right, that he should just close his eyes and trust. Blind trust. The second was suspicion Gu. It crawled on the right, a shadowy spider of dark smoke and cold ink. It had too many eyes, and they all darted around frantically. As Ren Zu looked at it, ice water dumped down his spine. The comfort vanished. He felt a sudden urge to look over his shoulder. Was there a predicament behind him? Was Strength Gu planning to strangle him? Paranoia. The third was attitude Gu. It sat in the center, between light and shadow. No fixed shape. One moment a blooming flower, the next a cold gray stone, then a pool of clear water reflecting Ren Zu's own face. A chameleon, a mask. You are my prisoners. Submit to me. If you do not, I will keep this net closed until you starve. The three Gu looked at each other. They saw the brute strength in Ren Zu's shoulders, the devastating power to crush mountains. But they also saw the panic in his posture, the emptiness where wisdom used to be. They were not afraid. Belief cannot be smashed. Suspicion cannot be intimidated. Attitude cannot be grasped. Human, you are mistaken. We are not like strength, who bows to power. We are not like wisdom, who bows to intellect. You cannot force us. Faith forced is not faith. Doubt sees through all traps. We propose a gamble. Open the net completely. We will run in 3 different directions. If you can catch us with your hands, the one you catch will submit to you forever. But if you miss, we vanish into the world. Ren Zu considered. He looked at the sky, vast, the earth, deep, the wind, fast. He touched the bronze beetle on his shoulder. He felt the explosive, mountainous power stored within his leg. He was no longer a frail old man. He was a middle-aged powerhouse. Speed is just a derivative of strength. I accept. He widened his stance, dug his heels into the dirt until the earth cracked, and yanked the drawstring open. That's chapter 18. The 3 spirits of the human psyche: blind faith, paranoid doubt, and shifting attitude. You can't force any of them. You can only gamble. The 3 Gu exploded out of the net. Belief shot straight up, a dazzling speck of pure white light, not wavering, not hesitating. It sought the ultimate height, where shadows could not exist. As it ascended, it grew brighter and brighter, merging with the glare of the heavens. Ren Zu looked up, squinting. He felt a sudden, irrational tug in his soul, a desire to fall to his knees, to close his eyes, to let the light wash over him. But as he watched it disappear into the azure sky, he realized, belief is like the sun, warm, comforting. It gives life to everything it touches, but it's too high. To chase belief is to chase the heavens. It is blind to the ground below. The sun doesn't see the dirt, the rot, the struggle of the ants. He could never jump high enough to catch a star. Suspicion shot straight down, the opposite of belief. A frantic, shadowy spider dripping with cold ink. It feared exposure. It hated the light. It dove into the soil at Ren Zu's feet, liquefying the earth, vanishing into the cracks, seeking the dark, damp abyss where the roots of the world twisted in silence. Ren Zu looked down, feeling a chill run up his spine. Suspicion is like the roots, deep, foundational. It anchors the tree so it doesn't fall, but it's cold. It lives in the dark where no light can reach. To chase suspicion is to dig into an endless abyss, constantly turning over rocks to see the worms underneath. It protects you from lies, but it buries you in isolation. He couldn't breathe in the dirt. He locked his gaze straight ahead. Attitude flew with the wind, erratic, unpredictable, changing shape. One moment lush green to blend with leaves, the next rugged gray to mimic a cliff, then transparent, trying to become the air itself. It was trying to deceive his eyes, to fit in, to become whatever the environment demanded. There! Ren Zu lunged. Not a clumsy stumble or a reckless leap. the calculated explosion of a middle-aged man possessed of strength. Strength Gu flared with a bronze halo, pouring energy into his thighs. The earth exploded behind him, leaving a crater. He became a blur. He ignored the blinding sun of belief. He ignored the dark shadows of suspicion. He focused entirely on the shifting, shimmering distortion ahead. Attitude tried to juke left, turning into a frightening tiger. Ren Zu didn't flinch. It tried to juke right, turning into a beautiful flower. Ren Zu didn't pause. He reached out with a hand calloused, scarred, strong enough to crush boulders, his fingers hooked into claws. He anticipated the wind, predicted the shift. Snap! His hand closed on empty air, or what appeared to be empty air. He felt something solid, slippery, warm, squirming in his grip. He skidded to a halt, heels carving trenches in the soil. Dust billowed around his feet like a storm cloud. He peeled back his fingers one by one. Sitting there, trapped in the cage of his bronze grip, was a strange, fluid creature changing shape constantly, smiling like a friend, frowning like a judge, snarling like a beast, weeping like a widow. Attitude Gu. Ren Zu let out a long breath. He looked up at the empty sky where belief had vanished, down at the dark earth where suspicion had hidden. He had missed them, but as he looked at the shifting creature in his hand, a realization struck him. Attitude is the bridge. If you have a good, warm attitude, it shines like a beacon. Eventually, belief will notice. It will come down from the high heavens to land on you. You don't need to chase belief. You attract it with your attitude. If you have a bad, cold attitude, it casts a shadow. Eventually, suspicion will notice. It will crawl out of the damp ground to bite you. You don't need to dig for suspicion. You invite it with your attitude. That's chapter 19. You don't chase faith or doubt. You attract them. The face you show the world determines which one comes to visit. Attitude Gu pooled in Ren Zu's palm, bubbling and reshaping. Finally, it solidified into a physical object. Wear me. I am a mask. Put me on your face, and you will be able to use my ability. I am the ultimate defense and the ultimate weapon. With me, you can swim in a sea of fire without burning. Put on the attitude of fire. Convince the flames you are one of them. Walk among ravenous beasts without fear. Put on the attitude of a king, and they will bow. Ren Zu picked up the mask with reverent fingers. It was a masterpiece. Thin, exquisite, made of translucent human skin, yet tougher than steel, softer than silk. It shimmered with 1,000 micro-expressions. Joy so pure it made you want to weep. Anger so fierce it made the air tremble. Sorrow so deep it eclipsed the night. He lifted the mask to his face and pressed it onto his skin. It fell off immediately, not like it was knocked off. It slid off as if his face were made of oiled glass. He picked it up and tried again, pressed harder, molding the edges to his jawline, the nose bridge tight, held it there, exerting pressure. Slough. As soon as he took his hands away, it peeled off. He tried vines, wrapped them around his head, pulled the knot so tight it dug into his scalp. The rope stayed tied. The mask phased through it like a ghost. What is going on? I am the master. You are the servant. Why do you refuse to be worn? On the ground, Attitude Gu laughed, not the intellectual laugh of wisdom, mocking stupidity. A dry, hollow sound, like wind through an empty skull. I know the reason, human. It's not that I refuse you. It's that you cannot hold me. Why? I have the face of a man, the strength to hold you, the will to use you. What am I missing? Because you have no heart. Attitude is the mask of the heart. It is the projection of the inner self outward. To wear a mask, there must be a face beneath it. To project an attitude, there must be an intent to project from. The mask needs a core to latch onto, the blood of emotion, the beat of desire, the warmth of feeling. Without a heart, there is no foundation. A mask with nothing behind it is just a shell that falls. You are trying to hang a painting on a wall that does not exist. Ren Zu's mind flashed back. The dark days in the wilderness, the cold wind, the predicaments circling, the despair, and hope Gu, that small, fragile, glowing speck, asking for a place to reside. Human, if you just give me your heart, it will be enough. He had reached into his own chest and torn out his beating, bleeding, feeling heart. Since that day, his chest had been empty, filled only with the glowing, cold, eternal white light of hope. He was heartless. Because he gave his heart to hope, he never feared difficulty, never gave up. When the predicaments came, he didn't despair. When blinded, he kept walking. When trapped in darkness, he kept guessing. But every gift has a price. The great Tao is fair. By giving his heart to hope, he lost the ability to truly hold the complex, messy, heavy weight of human emotion. He couldn't truly love, for love requires a heart. Couldn't truly hate, for hate requires a heart. He could only hope. And someone who is heartless cannot wear the attitude mask. To have an attitude, to feign, to pretend, to project, requires the intent of a heart. You cannot fake a smile if you don't know what a smile is covering. You cannot feign anger if you don't have a seed of anger to exaggerate. Ren Zu stood in the wilderness, the wind blowing against his strong, middle-aged face. He looked powerful. The bronze muscles of strength rippled under his skin. He looked determined. The white light of hope shone from his chest. But he could not look human. He tried to look angry. His face was merely stiff, a biological reaction, not an emotional one. He tried to look sad. His eyes were dry as deserts. He could not weep. He was raw existence, unmasked and vulnerable in his terrifying honesty. That's chapter 20. A mask is nothing without a face behind it. You can't project what you don't have. And hope, for all its power, is not a heart. It's an engine. It burns fuel. It doesn't hold anything. Ren Zu sat down heavily on a large, flat rock. At his feet lay Attitude Gu, shimmering in the dust like a spilled pool of mercury. He was troubled. The world was dangerous, not just physically. There were predicaments of social isolation, misunderstanding, jealousy. Strength was good for fighting, but not every problem could be punched. If a river blocks your path, you can punch the water, but it will only flow around your fist. If a lie blocks your path, you can scream the truth, but the lie will only laugh. Sometimes a beast is too big to fight, and you need to play dead. Sometimes a trap is too subtle to break, and you need to smile while walking around it. He needed to deceive, to negotiate, to interact. He looked down at the Gu. "Oh Gu, you are the master of appearances. Attitude dictates success and failure. It turns enemies into friends with a smile. It turns friends into strangers with a scowl. It makes the weak look strong and the strong look harmless. Now that I have encountered a problem, you know my situation better than anyone. You felt my face. You know what lies beneath." He tapped his chest. "Hollow. I have no heart. I gave it to hope so that I might survive the darkness. But because I survived, I am now unfit to wear you. Without a heart, how does a human face the world? I am too honest. My face shows my emptiness. My eyes show my coldness. I cannot pretend to be warm when I am filled with cool white light. How can I use you if you will not stick to my face?" Attitude Gu flickered. It sensed the genuine distress of the first human. "You are looking at this like a brute. You think of a mask as something you tie on with a rope. You think of attitude as something you force. But attitude is not forced. Attitude is birth. It must grow from the inside out. If you cannot wear the mask yourself, you are asking the wrong question. You are asking, how do I glue this on? When you should be asking, what is it sticking to? You do not need a biological heart to use me. The great Tao does not care about blood and muscle. It cares about intent. You only need a heart to wear me. A heart is just a container, a vessel for emotion, desire, will. The mask needs a vessel to cover, a shape to mold again. The mask floated slightly, rotating to face Ren Zu's chest. Your chest is empty. You gave your original heart to hope. Hope is powerful, yes. It keeps you moving. But hope is a fire. It is not a container. You cannot paint a face on a flame. However, an empty chest is not just a loss. It is also an opportunity. An empty cup can be filled with wine, or water, or poison. An empty chest can be filled with something new. Perhaps you must find something else to fill it. Find a new heart. Not of flesh and blood. You gave that away and cannot take it back, but a heart of meaning. Find something to put inside that cavern in your chest. Find a new core. And when you have something inside you again, come back to me. Then, and only then, will the mask stick. That's chapter 21. An empty chest is a chance, not just a loss. The question isn't, how do I wear the mask? It's, what am I wearing it for? Find the core. Then the face will follow. Find something else to fill it. The words hung in the air. Ren Zu sat frozen on the rock, Attitude Gu resting in his open palm like a pool of judgmental mercury. He looked down at his own chest. To the naked eye, it was bronze muscle, sturdy and unbreakable, but beneath the skin, it was a cavern. Ever since he had reached into his own ribs and given his beating heart to feed hope, he had been empty. The white light of hope occupied the space. Yes, but hope is not a heart. Hope is a fire. It burns, it drives, it consumes fuel to create energy, but it does not hold, it does not cradle. It is an engine, not a vessel. He was the strongest being on earth, yet the most incomplete. Strength. Gu gave him the power to crush boulders. Rules and regulation gave him the authority to define boundaries, but he was a warrior without a shield, an actor without a face, a king of the wild, yet too honest to survive in it. Oh Gu, you speak in riddles. You told me attitude says it all, that it dictates success and failure, friend and foe. Now that I have encountered a problem, you know it better than I do. I have the mask, but I cannot wear it. I have the desire to deceive, but I lack the foundation to lie. How can a heartless man wear the mask of the heart? What can possibly fill this void? Attitude Gu sighed, a sound like silk sliding over rough stone. This is not hard, Ren Zu. You are overthinking. The solution is simple logic. You lack a heart, so you must find a new one. If the cup is empty, fill it. If the house is vacant, invite a new tenant. Where can I find another? Can I hunt a tiger predicament and take its heart, carve a heart out of mountain rock, weave a heart out of wind? No, a beast's heart is too savage. You would become a monster, losing wisdom and method. A stone heart is too hard. You would become unmovable, stubborn, cold, unable to deceive, only to endure. A heart of wind is too fickle. You would change your face every second, forgetting who you are entirely. You need a human heart. Only a human heart has the complexity to hold the mask of attitude. Only a human heart can hold joy and sorrow, love and hate, truth and lies, all at the same time. But I am the only human. I am the ancestor. Where can I find a human heart if I am the only one walking this earth? Heart is nowhere and everywhere. It is not an object you find in a river. It is not a fruit you pluck from a tree. It is a state of being. A heart is created. It is crystallized emotion. Finding a heart is both the easiest thing in the world and the most difficult. For most beings, it takes a lifetime to forge a new heart. But with your current situation, you are ripe. You can obtain a specific heart right now. This heart is called loneliness, the heart of loneliness. Human, are you sure you want it? It is not a heart of flesh and blood. It is not a heart of warmth. It is a heart of void, a heart made of the space between stars. Once you obtain it, you will face endless pain. You will not bleed, but you will ache. You will face a silence louder than thunder, a coldness that hope cannot heat. You have strength, but strength cannot punch loneliness. You have rules, but you cannot regulate isolation. You will face fear, the primal fear of being the only consciousness in a dead universe. Ren Zu waved his hand dismissively. I have eaten raw meat and drunk blood. I have walked in the cavern of eternal night where I could not see my own fingers. I have been chased by death itself. What is a little pain to me? I am Ren Zu. I can endure anything. Loneliness is just a word. Survival is reality. Tell me the method. Attitude Gu bowed its head. The method is simple. You must go to the highest peak on a starry night. Stare at the sky. Do not sleep. Do not move. Do not cultivate. Just watch the stars. Open your soul to the vastness. Let the silence enter you. Once you reach daylight, if you have not looked away, you will obtain the heart of loneliness. That's chapter 22. The heart you need might be the one you're most afraid of. Loneliness isn't a weakness. It's a shape, a container. And empty containers are waiting to be filled. That night, the world seemed to conspire. The thick banks of clouds vanished. The howling wind died to a reverent whisper. The sky revealed itself, a vast inverted bowl of polished obsidian, endless and deep. Scattered across it were millions of stars, diamonds of cold fire, frozen in the act of burning, watching the world below with unblinking eyes. Ren Zu climbed to the highest peak, past the tree line where the air grew thin, until he reached a jagged spear of rock piercing the belly of the night. Frost formed on his bronze skin, but he didn't shiver. The cold outside was nothing compared to the cold he was inviting inside. He sat down, crossed his legs, and looked up. Before this night, his life had been a frantic blur of survival, a creature of the earth, always looking down or looking forward. When young, he fought for food, eyes glued to the ground for tracks and water. When old, he fought for survival, eyes darting into shadows for predators. When in the cave, he fought for escape, eyes useless and blind. When chasing Gu, he fought for power, eyes locked on the prize. He had never simply looked. Now he sat still. Strength Gu, sensing no enemy, fell dormant. Rules and regulations stopped vibrating. Ren Zu stared at the starry sky, and the starry sky stared back. At first, he saw only lights. He tried to count them. The numbers ran out. He tried to organize them into shapes. The patterns shifted. He tried to name them. He ran out of words. There were too many. They defied his rules, overwhelmed his regulation. As the hours dragged on, the silence seeped into his bones, bypassing his bronze skin, ignoring his strong muscles, settling directly into his empty chest. He saw the round sky, the domain he had tried to capture with his net but failed. It was so vast, infinite. It made his great net of heaven and earth look like a spiderweb spun by a child. The stars were beautiful, but they were also terrifying, cold, distant. They burned with a majesty completely indifferent to his existence. They didn't care if Ren Zu lived or died. They had burned before he was born and would burn long after his bones turned to dust. For the first time, Ren Zu realized he was not the protagonist of the universe. He was a speck of dust witnessing the infinite. I am small, he realized. I am the first human. I am the master of rules. I possess strength. I hold hope. I carry attitude. But against this sky, I am nothing. He looked at the vast galaxy swirling above him, a river of silver light that flowed without water, a river with no beginning and no end. I live a life of constant fear and insecurity. I run from predicaments. I chase Gu. I eat. I sleep. I struggle. But for what? Although I have hope to keep me moving forward, strength to protect my body, rules and regulation to order my world, attitude to hide my face, to survive in this land is still difficult as ever. Even if I die tomorrow, the sun will still rise, the wind will still blow. Will the world remember me? Will anyone rejoice over my existence? Will anyone grieve over my death? Silence. The stars did not blink. The silence remained unbroken. In this world, I am the only human. I am the anomaly. The beasts have packs, the birds have flocks, even the Gu have their own kind. Attitude has belief and suspicion, rules has regulations, but I am alone. Strength could not hug him, rules could not understand him, attitude could not comfort him. A cold, heavy sensation settled in the cavern of his chest, right next to the glowing light of hope. It drew substance from the silence, from the vastness, from the indifference of the stars. It was loneliness. The heart of loneliness crystallized, a transparent, crystalline heart of void, beating with the slow, agonizing rhythm of a dying star. The sun rose. The first rays of dawn pierced the darkness. Ideally, sunrise brings hope and happiness. But Ren Zu felt no happiness. The light did not comfort him. It exposed him. In the dark, his loneliness was hidden. In the light, his solitude was illuminated for all to see. The sun showed him the vast, empty world where no one looked like him, showed him the long shadow he cast, a shadow that stood alone. I cannot bear to see a world without kin. If the world is empty, I do not wish to look at it. I need eyes that look back at me. Desperation, madness, and the logic of the great Tao overtook him. He brought his bronze fingers to his face. Pluck. He dug out his left eye. Hot blood streamed down his cheek. He threw the eye onto the ground. It rolled in the dirt, absorbing the morning sunlight, absorbing the heat of dawn, absorbing Ren Zu's desire for a son, for legacy, for vitality. A column of golden fire erupted. From the fire stepped a young man, magnificent, flowing golden hair that shone like flames, body strong and muscular, radiating boundless energy. He kneeled. "O Ren Zu, my father, I am your eldest son, verdant great son." Pluck. He dug out his right eye. He threw it onto the ground. It rolled into the shadow of a rock, absorbing the lingering cool of the night, absorbing the mystery of the stars, absorbing Ren Zu's desire for a daughter, for wisdom, for serenity. A mist of silver moonlight coalesced. From the mist stepped a young girl, skin as pale as snow, hair like the night sky, eyes deep pools of silence. She held his trembling, bloody hand. "O Ren Zu, my father, I am your second daughter, desolate, ancient moon." Ren Zu sat on the mountain peak. His eye sockets were empty, bleeding hollows. His vision was gone. He was plunged into eternal darkness, but he was not alone. He felt the warm, strong hand of his son on his knee, the cool, gentle hand of his daughter in his palm. The crushing weight of the heart of loneliness lightened. It still beat, for a human is always lonely deep down, but the terror was gone. The void was shared. He laughed loudly. Tears of blood flowed from his empty sockets. Good. Good, good. I have children now. I can finally endure the pain of the heart of loneliness. From now on, there will be people celebrating my existence and grieving for my death. Even if I die now, you will remember me. I am no longer a speck of dust. I am an ancestor. He took a deep breath. Hope Gu inside him shone brighter than ever, illuminating his internal darkness. Only that. I lost both my eyes and can no longer see the light. I can no longer see the attitude Gu or the road ahead. From now on, you two shall observe this world for me. That's chapter 23. Loneliness is the price of being first, but it's also the reason you create. You tear pieces of yourself off and hope they become people who will hold your hand in the dark. For a brief, golden moment, it worked. Ren Zu felt the warmth of family, a fire that heated him better than the sun ever could. He thought he had cheated the great Tao, thought he had traded light for love, and that it was a bargain well struck. But good things in this world do not last forever. In fact, the brighter they are, the faster they burn. Verdant great sun and desolate ancient moon were not merely children. They were the incarnations of Ren Zu's eyes. Eyes are not meant to stay shut. Eyes are not meant to stare at the same spot forever. By their nature, eyes must move. They must scan. They must seek the new. The children were young, vibrant, filled with terrifying curiosity. They saw the green forests swaying in the wind, the blue rivers carving through canyons, the magnificent strange beasts roaming the plains. The mountain peak, which was Ren Zu's entire world, was merely a cage to them. "Father, look at that bird!" Verdant great son would shout, shaking Ren Zu's shoulder, forgetting in his excitement that his father sat in eternal night. "Its wings are like fire. Look, father, look!" Ren Zu would turn his head, empty sockets facing the voice. I cannot see it, my son. Describe it to me. But verdant great son was already distracted. Oh, it's gone behind the cloud. You missed it. Father, I want to see what is over that hill, desolate ancient moon would whisper, her attention drifting from Ren Zu's hand to the misty horizon. The shadows are longer there. The secrets are deeper. Stay, and tell me about the wind here. But the wind there smells sweeter. Soon the nature of the children overpowered their loyalty. They craved the scenery of the outside world like a starving man craves bread. They began to wander. At first, only an hour. Ren Zu would count the beats of his heart until they returned. Then a day. Ren Zu would sit freezing in the night, waiting for footsteps. Finally, weeks. They chased butterflies of desire. They climbed trees of ambition. They forgot to bring him food, forgot to bring him water. Ren Zu sat alone in total darkness. The wind bit his skin. Hunger gnawed at his stomach. The heart of loneliness woke up. Thump, 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 pumping cold despair through his veins. I gave my eyes for you. I made myself blind so I could see you, and now you leave me where I cannot follow. He turned his head left, blackness, turned right, blackness, looked up, could not see the sun he had created, looked down, could not see the moon he had birthed, could not see the smiles of his children. The world was a boundless abyss of black, a prison without walls. He was the ancestor of humanity, the master of rules, the wielder of strength, and he was utterly, pathetically discarded. He sat until his lips cracked from thirst, until moss began to grow on his boots. But in the absolute suffocating darkness of his vision, a darkness that should have been total and permanent, he saw a speck, faint, tiny, steady, not external, coming from within, smaller than a grain of sand, yet eternal, unshakable. It burned with a white gold hue that was neither hot like the sun nor cold like the moon. It simply was. I am blind. How can I see? Am I going mad? Has the heart of loneliness finally broken my mind? Attitude Gu spoke. You are not mad. And you are not seeing a memory. This is not the light of the sun, which burns the skin, nor the light of fire, which consumes wood. This is a light that requires no fuel. This is the eternal light given out by Faith Gu. When you had eyes, you relied on sight. You believed only what you could see. If a cliff was in front of you, you stopped. If a fruit was red, you ate it. Sight is the tool of certainty. But now you have lost your sight. You are surrounded by the unknown. You do not know if your children will return. You do not know if the sun has risen. You do not know if the next step will lead to a fall. When you stop seeing with your eyes, you are forced to begin seeing with your spirit. That speck of light is the belief in things unseen. It is the trust that the sun is there, even when the sky is black. It is the trust that your children love you, even when they are gone. Faith is the only light that shines in absolute darkness. It is the only Gu that can live in the shadow of the heart of loneliness without being consumed. As long as you have faith, you are never truly blind. For while eyes show you the world as it is, faith shows you the world as it could be. Ren Zu listened. He focused his mind on that tiny, impossible speck. He didn't know if his children would come back. Logic said they had abandoned him. Experience said the world was cruel, but the light of faith remained steady. He stopped weeping. He clutched the speck in his mind like a drowning man clutching a plank of wood. He sat on the rock, blind and alone, and began the hardest task of all. He waited. That's chapter 24. Faith isn't about evidence. It's about holding on when there's no reason to. It's the light that doesn't need fuel, and sometimes it's all you have. Chapter 25. The Pursuit of the Moon. While Ren Zu sat frozen like a statue on the peak, clutching the invisible light of faith, his children were moving. They were the first children of humanity, direct descendants of the ancestors' eyes, and they possessed a vitality the world had never seen. Verdant Great Sun was the incarnation of Ren Zu's left eye. Yang, golden vitality, action, heat. Tall, broad-shouldered, radiant. His hair flowed like liquid gold. Wherever he walked, the darkness fled. Flowers bloomed instantly, tricked into thinking it was noon. Rivers warmed, fish leaping in excitement. He was loud, boisterous, full of life, the embodiment of action. Desolate ancient moon was the incarnation of Ren Zu's right eye. Yin, silver mystery, reflection, cold, slender, graceful, silent. Her hair was the color of the midnight sky, speckled with starlight. Her skin was as pale and cool as frost. Wherever she walked, a hush fell. Crickets began to chirp. Nocturnal beasts woke. A thin layer of mist rose, obscuring the path in beautiful, melancholic fog. She was quiet, observant, full of secrets. The embodiment of reflection. Because they were the only two humans of their generation, the only two beings in the vast wilderness who walked on two legs and spoke the language of Ren Zu, They were inseparable. They explored valleys where giant beasts slept, climbed cliffs where eagles nested, ate wild fruits together, sharing sweet juice, slept near each other, golden heat protecting sister from cold, silver coolness, soothing brother's fire. Over time, as the seasons turned and they grew from manifestations of eyes into fully realized beings, this close association bred a strange fruit. Verdant Great Sun began to look at his sister differently. He stopped looking at the scenery and started looking at her. Watched how moonlight caught in her dark hair. Watched the elegant curve of her neck as she drank from a stream. Admired her pale skin, so fragile yet so enduring. Her deep eyes, holding the silence of the galaxy. A deep, burning desire took root in his golden heart. Not just familial love, a yearning for union. The primal urge of Yang to seek Yin to complete the circle. One day, as they sat by a field of wildflowers, he could contain it no longer. Sister, look at us. We are the only two. The beasts have their mates. The birds have their pairs. Even the trees grow with roots intertwined. Let us unite. Let my fire warm your ice. Let your silence calm my noise. Together, we can be complete. It was the first proposal of marriage in human history. Desolate ancient moon didn't blush, didn't smile. She looked at him with eyes that were like deep pools of ice water, clear, beautiful, chillingly distant. She gently, firmly pulled her hand away. No. Why? Am I not strong? Am I not bright? You are too bright. You are the sun, and I am the moon. It is the law of the great Tao. When the sun rises, the moon must fade. When the moon shines, the sun must sleep. We can walk together as brother and sister, but we cannot merge. Fire and ice cannot share a bed without one destroying the other. She stood up and walked away, trailing a mist of rejection. Verdant Great Sun was left sitting in the flowers, his golden light dimming with confusion. He had never been denied anything. Rejection tasted sour, like ash. She doesn't understand. She thinks we're incompatible. I must prove I am worthy. He began a relentless campaign. Gifts. He traveled to scorching deserts to find the solar sunflower, a flower made of pure flames. It is too hot. A wave of her hand, and it wilted into frost. Bravery. He found a thunderboar terrorizing the valley, fought it for 3 hours, killed it, dragged its massive tusk to her feet. Violence is loud. I prefer quiet. Art. He sat beneath her cave and sang songs of his love, his voice shaking leaves. You are disturbing the sleep of the crickets. Her heart remained a fortress of ice. Verdant Great Sun grew frustrated. I need help. I don't know how to open a heart. He thought of his father's stories. Wisdom, Gu. Wisdom knows all. Wisdom knows the logic of the world. Surely, wisdom knows the logic of a woman's heart. He stood up, kicked the fire out. I will find wisdom. That's chapter 25. You can't force a match that nature doesn't want. The sun and the moon are not meant to merge. Some rejections aren't about you. They're about the laws of the world. Chapter 26. The First Taste of Life. East. Verdant Great Sun found Wisdom Gu in a valley of flowers, floating among the petals, drinking the nectar of experience. Wisdom. How do I win the love of desolate ancient moon? Wisdom Gu saw the golden man coming and knew instantly what he wanted. Humans, always demanding answers to questions they should solve themselves. It fluttered its wings and vanished into the bushes. Verdant Great Sun didn't give up. He was the sun. He had endurance. You cannot hide from the light. He chased wisdom for 3 days and 3 nights. When it hid in a dark cave, he walked in, his body glowing so brightly the shadows fled. When it hid in the dense canopy, he climbed the tallest tree. His heat-making leaves curled back. He never stopped, never slept, never ate. His desire fueled his legs. Finally, Wisdom Gu couldn't endure the annoyance anymore. It stopped on a high branch and looked down at the panting, sweating golden man. Young human, why do you chase me? I have no honey for you, no strength. I don't want strength. I have enough to kill a tiger, but not enough to win a smile. I want to know how to win her love. Wisdom Gu looked at him. It saw the raw, chaotic energy, the foolishness of trying to force sun and moon to merge, but it also saw the potential for a lesson. To understand love, you must first understand life. You are too simple, Verdant Great Sun. You only know heat. You only know sweet. You do not know the complexity of the soul. In the East, there dwells a group of honey peach monkeys. They are masters of fermentation. They know the secret of brewing wine. Go, drink the wine brewed by them. Taste it, understand it, and then come find me. Verdant Great Sun turned his back on the valley and marched toward the east. The journey was a descent into a living paradise. The rugged gray stones softened. The hills rolled out like a green carpet. Rivers giggled over smooth, moss-covered stones. The air grew thick and heavy, not oppressive, but nurturing, smelling of wet earth, blooming jasmine, fermenting berries, the scent of a world that had never known winter. He found the honey peach monkeys. They were pink, fat, happy little creatures. No claws, no fangs, existing only to enjoy. The Monkey King, round and stained with juice, offered him a stone bowl of pink, thick wine. Verdant Great Sun drank. The taste exploded on his tongue. Sweet, but not the simple sweetness of sugar. A symphony, the fresh tang of peach skin, the rich creaminess of flesh, the deep warmth of alcohol. It was the essence of comfort, the embrace of a mother he never knew, the safety of a cradle, the moment before sleep when you are perfectly warm and perfectly safe. Innocence, pure, untainted, blindingly bright, delicious. He couldn't stop. He drank the rest in one long, desperate gulp. The wine hit his stomach and bloomed into warm, fuzzy heat. The knot of anxiety in his chest dissolved. She will love me. Of course she will. Why was I worried? I am the sun. Who could hate the sun? Love is easy. Love is happy. Love is sweet. He ran back to Wisdom Gu, beaming, reeking of peaches, his face flushed. I understand. Love is sweet. I just need to be sweet to her, and she will melt like sugar in water. Wisdom Gu looked down at the foolish, happy man. It saw regression, a man who had retreated into the safety of childhood to escape the pain of adulthood. You have tasted the beginning. The infancy of love is always sweet. The illusion that nothing can go wrong. But look at you. You are stumbling. You are blind to the roots at your feet. If you only know sweetness, you will break at the first sign of hardship. That is not the whole truth. That is only the shell. Go west. That's chapter 26. Sweetness is nice, but it's not real. Real love has thorns. If you only want the honey, you're not ready for the hive. Chapter 27. The second taste of life. West. Verdant Great Sun's smile, still sticky with sugar, faltered. Go west. He turned his back on the sunrise, on the lush, forgiving paradise, and took his first step toward the land where the light goes to die. The transition was violent. The humid, fragrant breeze died, replaced by a dry, rasping wind that tasted of grit and ancient dust. Soft hills hardened into jagged ridges. Emerald grass withered into brown straw, then gray ash, then nothing but cracked, baked clay. This was a land of metal and earth, where soft flesh was stripped away to reveal hard bones. The sun beat down without mercy. In the east, it was a nurturer. Here, it was a tyrant. Verdant Great Sun walked for weeks. His golden robes became heavy with gray dust. His lips cracked and bled. His throat filled with sand. The wind didn't sing. It howled through sandstone canyons like a grieving widow, whispering names he wanted to forget. Ren Zu, ancient moon, failure. Finally, he came to a range of sheer cliffs. High up on the cliff face, he saw openings, dark, narrow mouths, leading into the belly of the mountain. He climbed. His golden boots scrambled on loose shale. He cut his hands on sharp rocks. No helpful branches here, only the indifference of stone. He entered the caves of the psychic monkeys. The atmosphere was suffocating, cool, but the damp, stale chill of a crypt. It smelled of wet soil, old iron, and silence. These monkeys were the antithesis of their eastern cousins. Thin, skeletal, limbs like brittle sticks. But their heads were massive, bulbous, covered in pulsating veins, foreheads wrinkled with deep valleys of excessive thought. They sat in circles, holding their oversized heads in their hands, as if the weight of their own minds was too much to bear. They remembered every mistake they had ever made, every fruit that had rotted before they could eat it, every family member who had died. They ruminated on the futility of existence, turning their pain over and over. One monkey slowly raised its head, large, watery eyes filled with a knowledge that burdened the soul. It reached behind itself and produced a cup, dark, unpolished clay, rough and jagged. It held out the cup. Inside was liquid black as ink, viscous, thick like oil, reflecting no light. Verdant Great Sun took it. He lifted it to his cracked lips. He took a sip. Gah! He gagged, doubling over, bitter, a bitterness that defied description. It curled his tongue, constricted his throat. Gall, ash, rusted nails. It sucked every drop of moisture from his mouth. He wanted to spit it out. Shame forced him to swallow. The black sludge slid down his throat like liquid lead. Then, the transformation happened. As the bitter sludge settled, the warm, fuzzy intoxication of sweet wine vanished, blown away by a freezing wind of reality. The illusion that everything is fine shattered. The wine triggered a hallucination of truth. He saw desolate ancient moon, not as a prize to be won, but her back as she walked away. Felt the coldness of her rejection not as a challenge, but as a fact to be accepted. She does not want me. He saw his father, Ren Zu, the empty, bleeding eye sockets, tasted the guilt of abandoning a blind old man on a mountain just to chase butterflies. I am a bad son. He saw himself, not glorious son, but a man made of dust walking toward a grave, alone, mortal. He returned to Wisdom Gu, his step heavy, his eyes clear and full of pain. Love is bitter. It hurts. It is hard to swallow. It forces you to look at things you want to ignore. Why would anyone want this? Why not stay in the East forever? Wisdom Gu nodded slowly. Life is sweet and life is bitter. Love is the same. You cannot have the fruit without the root. Sweetness gives you energy to move, but bitterness gives you reason to stop and think. Bitterness cleanses the spirit of illusion. It grounds you. It makes you real, but you are still missing the fire. You have tasted being the child and the sage. Now you must taste being the warrior. Go north. That's chapter 27. Bitterness is the truth you don't want to hear, but it's also the thing that makes you grow up. You can't live on sugar alone. Eventually, you have to swallow the ash. Chapter 28. The third taste of life. North. Verdant Great Sun turned his back on the setting sun and marched toward the polar horizon. The air grew sharp. The temperature plummeted. The wind, which had howled like a widow in the west, now screamed like a warrior in the north, carrying ice crystals that cut against his golden skin like tiny razors. The world turned white. Ground vanished beneath sheets of blue permafrost. Glaciers loomed in the distance like the spines of sleeping dragons. After weeks of trekking, he felt a strange vibration in his boots. Thump, 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 a rhythmic pounding deep in the earth. He crested a ridge of black ice and looked down, the Valley of Vulcans. A scar on the face of the north. Magma bubbled from the core, creating pools of orange lava that hissed and spat against the snow. And living in this hellscape of fire and ice were the Vajra monkeys. They were monsters. 2 heads taller than a man, bodies rippling with muscles like steel, fur standing up like iron needles, colored black and blood red, horns jagged and scarred, eyes burning with the manic energy of coals. They didn't play. They fought. They brewed wine in massive cauldrons of obsidian, heated directly by magma, thunder grains that exploded with electricity, fire dragon fruits that grew only in scorched earth. When Verdant Great Sun stepped into their territory, a dozen monkeys stopped their brawling. The Monkey King, a behemoth with a scar tearing through his lip and one missing ear, leaped forward. He slammed a massive clay jar in front of Verdant Great Sun. Drink or fight, drink or die. It was not hospitality, it was a test. Verdant Great Sun looked at the jar. Heat radiated in waves. The fumes made his eyes water. Gasoline, crushed peppercorns, charred wood, raw aggression. He grabbed the jar with both hands. The clay was scalding hot, burning his palms. He didn't let go. He lifted it to his lips. To power, he drank. Boom! It was strong, a riot in a bottle. It tore down his throat like a torch, scraped his gullet, hit his stomach like a falling anvil. Then it exploded, a roaring furnace in his gut. The alcohol rushed into his bloodstream, not as a gentle wave, but as a stampede of wild horses. Verdant Great Sun's golden eyes turned blood red. The whites of his eyes turned crimson. Fear vanished. Hesitation vanished. Conscience vanished. Good! His voice was a thunderclap that cracked the ice on the cliffs. This wine matched his nature. Yang, heat, vitality. He felt a surge of adrenaline so potent it felt like godhood. I am the sun. I am power. Why did I beg her? Why did I sing songs? I should have just taken her hand. I should have burned the forest down until she looked at me. He lost control. He chugged, opened his throat and let the fiery liquid pour in like magma. Gulp, 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 until the jar was empty. The fire inside wasn't done. The strong wine was too much for a human body. The pressure built in his chest, expanding his ribs, rushed up his spine, searing his meridians, reached his scalp. Whoosh! A pillar of real physical flame erupted from the top of his head. Ah! Hot! It burns! He dropped to his knees, slapped at his head, rolled in the snow, dunked his head in a snowbank. Hiss! The snow turned to steam. The fire didn't go out. It wasn't external. It was the fire of his own excess, the manifestation of unbridled passion and unchecked vitality. His magnificent flowing golden hair ignited permanently, a torch that would never be extinguished, a crown of his own lack of control. He scrambled to his feet, smoke trailing from his head like a comet. He ran back to Wisdom Gu, collapsed at the base of its tree, a wreck, clothes scorched, eyes wild and bloodshot, hair a flickering torch. I understand. Passion is good. Power is good. But everything should be taken with moderation. Too much fire does not warm the house. It consumes it. Too much force does not win the heart. It destroys it. Wisdom Gu laughed, a sound like wind chimes clattering in a storm. Beautiful, but sharp. You have tasted being the child, sweetness, and learned that innocence is blind. You have tasted being the sage, bitterness, and learned that reality is harsh. You have tasted being the warrior, strength, and learned that power without control is self-destruction. You are burned out, exhausted, but there is one final escape. The escape that comes when the fire has nothing left to burn. Go south. That's chapter 28. Strength is a fire. It warms. It lights the way. But hold it too close, and it burns you alive. Moderation isn't cowardice. It's the difference between a hearth and a funeral pyre.